So it is now 2024, so I'm going to go back and rank each and every new 2023 release I saw last year. I think I've got like 24 to go through. But yeah, anyway, so today I'm going to go through and rank all of them on a little tier sheet for you. So hope you enjoy. So I decided to keep this tier list fairly simple for today. We've got the A, B, C, D, and F tier. I just think there's too many movies for me to actually make some kind of theme out of it. And in terms of the order I'm going to go in, I decided to go in the watch order that I went through last year. So I'm going with the first movie that I saw last year, which was Ant and the Wasp: Quantumania, and ending off with the last movie I saw, which was Leave the World Behind, which I saw sometime like mid-December. So I'm trying to keep this as fairly simple and quick as possible, just because there's a couple of movies on here that like I only saw once, and to be honest, I've forgotten a lot about them just because I only saw them like months and months ago. So I've forgotten a lot about them. So yeah, as I said, I'm just gonna keep this as simple and as quick as possible. So starting off, we got Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania. I'm gonna put this one in the C tier. I particularly enjoyed the acting from both Jonathan Majors and Paul Rudd as Ant-Man and Kang. Love those two characters, but there was not much else that I enjoyed. Like, I really did not enjoy what they did with the MODOK character. It was extremely cheesy and just didn't like what they did with that character. Also, I didn't enjoy the acting from the actress who played Cassie Lang. And just like the plot in itself just didn't work well with me. Like, if we're supposed to make Kang the main like big bad of the multiverse saga, then just Ant-Man and the Wasp should not be enough to take him down. Like, this doesn't make sense. And one thing that I think went under a couple people's radars, I don't know, but the fact that you had an Ant-Man movie without Louise, which was my favorite character in both the first and second movie, it just doesn't feel right in an Ant-Man movie. And I think the thing that was good about the Ant-Man movies is that they're low scale and low stakes, and this one just didn't feel like an Ant-Man movie, so just it didn't work well for me. So I'm gonna keep it in the C tier. Moving on, we got the Super Mario Bros. I'm gonna put this in the B tier. It was very well animated. Like, it was definitely one of the most visually pleasing movies of the year, and I loved Jack Black as Bowser, and that Peaches song stuck in my head way longer than it should have. It was a very fun, lighthearted movie, but just definitely not one of my absolute favorites of the year. So I'm gonna keep it in the B tier. Moving on, we've got John Wick Chapter 4. I'm gonna put this in the A tier. It was super well choreographed, and some of the action and fight scenes was so well done. Like, I don't know how in the world they filmed a couple of things in this, especially that scene where there's a whole whack of different cars. I forget what that place is in Paris, but wherever that place was with like the arc to something, I forget what it is. I don't speak French, but that whole scene where they just have a whole whack of cars going around in circles, and he's still like fighting with all these characters. Like, I don't know how in the world they filmed that. Like, I'm really curious. I want to see a behind the scenes of that scene, because that's crazy how they did that. And I really enjoyed a couple of characters in this movie. Of course, John Wick and Keanu Reeves as John Wick. Always a pleasure to see. And I think they did a very good job with the send off of this character. Just wasn't my top movies of the year, so I have to put just below the S tier, but definitely think it's going to be stay at the top of the A tier. Moving on to an S tier movie, I've got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, I almost didn't survive this movie. Like, this movie pulled at my heartstrings so much, especially with any scene with Rocket in this movie was absolutely amazing. Like, this movie made Rocket my favorite, not only my favorite Guardian of the Galaxy, but actually one of my top three Avengers in the MCU. And I think they really did a good job at giving some development to some of the characters that they didn't do very well in a couple of the movies or the holiday special, like particularly Mantis and Nebula. I think they did such a good job with those characters in this movie. Like, Mantis, I did not enjoy her at all in the second Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and I think she was a little too cheesy in the holiday special as well. Like, she was a little bit better in the holiday special, but I think they really leveled up her character in this movie, and they did a great send off to each and every one of these characters without having to kill them off, which I was very thankful for. So definitely one of the top movies of the year. Now, moving on to my personal favorite movie of last year, I've got Across the Spider Verse. I absolutely loved this movie, and the last 20 to 25 minutes of this movie were absolutely insane. They had so many cliffhangers that have me dying waiting for the Beyond the Spider Verse movie to come out, which we don't even have a release date for yet. But just this movie was absolutely insane. Like every any Spider-Man fan would have absolutely loved this movie. You have like cameos from oh, I forget Donald Glover, I think, as the Prowler, and you have all these cliffhangers at the very end where you have Miles figuring out that he is actually not supposed to be a Spider-Man, and if he wasn't Spider-Man, then his Spider-Man would have lived or something like that. Then you've got uh Miles being trapped on the wrong universe, and then you've got Miles's turns into the Prowler, at least in whatever Earth he's on. Like it's like a whole whack of stuff at the very end, just like giving you gut punches, going like, "Oh my goodness, this is insane." It's like leading it, and the Spot as well. Like just goes from like a villain of the week is what they called him to one of the most menacing and terrifying villains ever. Like this guy's gonna be unstoppable in the third movie. Like I am. I'm waiting in anticipation for the third movie to come out, and I'm gonna be the first one to buy a ticket when it comes out because this movie, it was a very good movie in itself, but also like what I find with some of these movies where like they're part one is that it's just set up where the movie in itself isn't very well done because it's so focusing on setting up the second movie. This movie felt like it closed off a couple of things. Like it wasn't just a setup movie; it was also a very good movie in itself. And I just like I can't even stop talking about this movie. Was absolutely amazing, top movie of the year. And unfortunately, I have to go from that to Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. I didn't want to put this in F, but I have to put this in F because from this list of movies, a Transformers movies is the most forgettable movie on this list. Like I can't remember almost anything about this plot. It was just so poorly done. I didn't like these all look like small like action figures. Like I definitely enjoyed the visuals of these like Transformers in the Michael Bay movies versus these reboots. Like you have the five Michael Bay movies, and then you have the Bumblebee movie, and then you have this one. This one was somehow worse than all six of those, in my personal opinion. Like it was just very, very poor and super unforgettable. They barely introduced almost any of the characters in this movie, and especially the female human. I can't remember any of these characters' names. It was just that forgettable. And actually, I have a friend I watched this movie with who knows a lot more about the Transformers lore than I do, and it was just he said it was just not good at all. Like I think this is actually the worst movie of the year, just because like, it's a Transformers movie and it ended up being just so painfully bad. So I have to leave it in the F tier, unfortunately. Now we've got Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, and I am going to put this. I originally had it above. I had it above the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but I think I'm going to put it just below. I think. Just barely below. Again, great action scenes, and the entire lead up to Ilsa Faust's death had me on edge. I saw this movie three times actually last year, and every single time I saw it, that one stunt of Tom Cruise riding a bike off a cliff is absolutely insane. Like a couple of things that they did in this movie were absolutely insane. Like they somehow end up leveling up every single Mission Impossible movie. I don't know how they keep doing this. It just the stunts just keep going up, and actually, you know what? Yeah, no, I'm just gonna. I think I'm gonna actually have to say that the Guardians of the Galaxy and Mission Impossible are tied. I can't put one above the other. They're tied, even though like I can't put one on top of each other. But you know what I mean. They're tied. They're just both very good movies, and just yeah, Mission Impossible definitely my favorite action movie of last year. Moving on to Oppenheimer. This is I'm gonna put this on the S tier, but towards the bottom. just because this isn't my favorite genre of movie. Like, this movie was very, very well done, and like it has the most stacked cast I've ever seen in a movie. Like, you got Robert Downey Jr., Cillian Murphy or Killian Murphy, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh, Matt Damon. Like, the list just keeps going on and on and on with absolute great castings. And Killian Murphy definitely deserves an Oscar for this movie. Like, it was very, very well done, just not particularly my genre. And also, Robert Downey Jr. was insane in like the last maybe 30 minutes or so. Just loved his character of Lewis Strauss. I think that's how you pronounce it, but very, very good movie. Just not particularly my genre of film, but definitely deserves an S tier. Now, moving on to Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. I think I'm gonna put this in the B tier, but above the Mario Bros. Movie. Again, a very well animated movie, and a couple of scenes were very, very comedic, which I absolutely loved. Like, the chemistry between all these four characters was just absolutely hilarious. But it's like a couple of things were a little odd what they did with the end, but definitely one of the funniest movies. I think one of the movies that be laughing the most in theaters this year. But just definitely, I don't think it just lives up to an S or A tier movie. Like, it was a fun movie, but definitely not one of like the my favorites of the year. So I'm gonna keep it in the B tier. Now, Gran Turismo, I'm gonna put this. People are probably not gonna like this, but I'm actually gonna put this above John Wick in the A tier. Gran Turismo was the only car movie I got a chance to see. I know Ferrari came in theaters in December, but I just didn't get a chance to see it before the year ended, so it's not on this list. I loved a lot of things about this movie, but definitely doesn't live up to like the hype of a lot of other car movies. But just in itself, it was a very, very fun movie. I saw it twice in theaters, and I loved it both times I saw it. And there are a couple of scenes were very well acted, especially between Han and his father. Uh, Once he meets up after the crash, and just like the crash itself, the acting from, oh, I can't remember his name, but just the acting from the three people on this poster. I can't remember the names of any of these actors. I'm sorry, but all these three did very good performances in this movie. So it's an A tier movie. Just definitely not one of the top movies of last year. Now, Blue Beetle, I'm gonna put this one. I don't know if I want to put it above or below Quantumania. I think I'm gonna put it above Quantumania, but it's in the C tier. It isn't a bad movie per se, but it feels like an absolute copy of almost every single superhero movie except they made it like Latino, I think. Like, you have a character who stumbles across some tech which makes him a superhero and is fighting like the owner of this company. Like, it just feels like Iron Man again, but Ant Man at the same time, and Spider Man. Like, just feel like a mesh of all these characters, but like not anything new that it's giving us per se. Like, really like the family dynamic of the family itself, which is why it goes above Quantumania, just because like the mesh between characters was done a little better than that movie, but it didn't feel like there was a whole load of original content. Like, it felt like they kind of just copied the stereotypical superhero movies. There just wasn't any of the bigger movies of the year. Now, this next one, Jules. I saw this actually with my grandmother at some small theater. I can't really remember much from it, except that basically the best way I can describe this is that it's E.T., but with seniors instead of kids. I'm gonna put this in the D tier. It wasn't a bad movie, but just like not my style of movie. Just like, yeah, I don't know. It wasn't a bad movie per se, but just yeah, it was a movie. It was kind of just meh. So I'm gonna put it in the D tier. Next, we got Barbie. I'm gonna put this in the A tier, below John Wick. Loved Margot Robbie as well as Ryan Gosling in their roles. I think both of them deserve some kind of award for their acting. It was great. And what I liked about this, I was actually scared going into this movie because it has like fighting the patriarchy kind of stuff, and like I don't particularly enjoy it when movies try to push like a social agenda into the plot, but the way that they actually handled it, I think, was very well done. And like the acting and like it actually fit in with the story, instead of just like making a movie in order to like prove a societal point. It actually like fits in with the plot, which is what I really liked. And yeah, as I said, I loved the acting in this movie, but just definitely like again, not really my genre of film. Like it's more of a comedy. I don't really tend to watch comedies too much, but I think it was a really well done movie. Just not one of my absolute favorites, but definitely deserves at least the A tier. Moving on to Dumb Money. This was an interesting movie. I don't tend to watch many movies in this genre at all. And I'm going to put it actually right here at the top of the B tier. I have a friend that does some investing stuff, and I saw this movie with him, and he actually knows like all the stuff that went on with GameStop, and like that's what this movie's about, like the whole GameStop incident. And a couple of the scenes that they had there were so darn funny, like especially when they brought any of the Reddit stuff in there. Oh my gosh, it was hilarious. Like it's a good movie about like financial skills and like as someone who does investing, it was actually quite interesting movie, but definitely not one of those like super strong movies of the year, but definitely one of the better ones, or at least compared to a lot of the mid stuff that we have in the mid area of B and C. So yeah, I think it's the top of the B tier kind of movie. Next, we've got The Creator. I wanted to put it in the S tier because I really enjoyed the ending, but now that I've looked back on it, I don't think it quite deserves the S tier, but I'm gonna put it at the top of the A tier. The last 10 minutes, not even the last 10 minutes, the last 5 minutes was like the biggest gut punch I've ever had in a theater. Like, I actually walked out of this movie and I couldn't drive my car for about 5 minutes because I was hyperventilating. Like, this movie, the last five, if for anyone who has seen this movie, the last 5 minutes had me crying in theaters. Like, it was insane. Like, the acting of the young girl and just a couple of the things that they said in the dialogue were, oh, it was I don't even know how to describe it. It was insane. The only thing is, again, when it comes to science fiction movies, it wasn't one of the strongest ones because like it felt like very felt like the plot was moving extremely slow. But the thing about it is that it actually made the payoff at the end that much better because it was working towards that payoff in the entire movie. But that meant that the movie in itself didn't really go anywhere for a very long time. So unfortunately, I do need to keep in the A tier just because of a couple of the plot details, but it was beautifully shot and just the ending was absolutely amazing. Next, we've got A Haunting in Venice, and if I'm correct, I think this is the only mystery movie I saw last year. I'm gonna put it at the top of the C tier. Yeah. It was definitely a very mid movie. Definitely, I think the weakest of the trilogy. Like they have the Murder on the Orient Express, and then I forget what the other movie is, but there's one in Egypt as well. Death on the Nile, that's what it's called. It definitely was the weakest of the three, and let's just say I didn't know who like the killer was like until the very end, but like you could definitely do process of elimination throughout much of the movie like very quickly. Like I think there's 10 or 11 characters or something like that, and within maybe the first 20 minutes you knew instantly that there were four or five of them, like absolutely zero chance. It's like half of the mystery is already gone within the first bit of the movie, so definitely not a strong mystery movie, but it was a fairly good movie and didn't have any huge problems unlike any of the other movies below it. Next, we have Fair Play, which is the first Netflix movie I saw last year, and I don't really know where to put this. I think I'm gonna put it here. Yeah, I think I put. Actually, you know what? Yeah, no, I'm gonna keep it there. It was a very well acted movie, but just a couple of things were really hard to watch, and not a huge fan of movies that make me like have a big ick while watching it. Like there's very like big almost rape scene in the thing, which isn't, I don't know how to describe that scene, but that was I didn't enjoy. And just a couple things, like it was very emotionally intense, like it was very well acted movie, but just the plot of it is not the kind of movie I tend to watch a lot, just because it's very it's one of those movies that's hard to watch. Like it makes you feel sick most of the movie because of the way that these two are acting together, and it's just yeah, it made me feel very icky. But like the last 5 seconds again was like a very it was an interesting ending. Like you had an ending with her standing with a knife over him. It's going like, whoa, okay then. Like it was a very hard to watch movie, so I'm gonna put it in the B tier, but it's very well acted. So yeah, I'm gonna keep it there. Next we have Pain Hustlers. Unfortunately, I have to put this only here. I wish I could put it higher because Emily Blunt and Chris Evans leading the performance, as well as Andy Garcia, I think. Like, I had a good stack of actors, but like basically, I don't really know how to describe this except for saying that it's the female version of Wolf of Wall Street, pretty much. You have like a female person doing some illegal things to make money, and it just felt like very. I don't know. It didn't feel like there was anything like huge coming from this movie. Like I felt it very boring and mediocre throughout much of it, and like I can't really remember many details about the movie in itself. So unfortunately, I have to put in the D tier. D tier is just gonna be mid movies I can't really remember much of anything from. Next, we have Five Nights at Freddy's. This is an interesting one because I have never played any of the games before, so I know absolutely nothing about the lore of this movie. Like, I walked in here, all I knew is about it was based off of a horror video game with animatronics. That's all I knew. So I'm gonna put it. People will say this isn't smart, but I'm gonna put it here, in the middle of B tier. I particularly enjoyed Josh Hutcherson in this movie, and oh my goodness, the memes of him after this were on my feed for months. It was, oh, I got so sick of those. But yeah, the movie in itself, it was fairly good, but I was definitely expecting more horror, or like at least more gore when it came to a couple of the scenes. It was fairly well acted, but just definitely it is a B tier movie. I don't really know what else to say about it. Like it's not bad, but it was a fairly decent. B is my decent tier, like fairly good, but definitely not one of the most memorable. Next, I got Hunger Games: Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. What a title! I'm gonna put this right here. I want to put it higher, but I'm not a fan of Rachel Zegler. I don't know if that's a controversial opinion, but I really did not enjoy her performance. Like whenever I watched this, like when I watched this movie, I was kind of comparing the acting between like Tom Blythe and Josh Hutcherson, and then Rachel Zegler and Jennifer Lawrence. And let's just say the acting on both of their parts was nowhere near as well done as the original Hunger Games trilogy. And just like storyline itself, I think they should have split this one into two parts because it felt like it dragged on for a long time and yet felt underdeveloped at the same time, which I don't really know how to describe it, but like they split this movie into three parts, like but in one movie. So you had like the first chapter and the second chapter and the third chapter. I think what they should have done is like end the movie with Snow getting like expelled or like cast out. That would have been a fairly good end to the movie, and then like develop more on like his character's reaction to that, and like going from used to living in the capital and now not being in the capital, like being in a different district, and just like his understanding of how to deal with that. Like I think that would have been a better part two. Like definitely this movie should have been split into two parts. That's basically what I'm saying. Like, it just felt very rushed and underdeveloped. So if they had split into two parts, I think it could have been better for both part one and two. So it's in the A tier though because I love dystopian genre. Like this genre of movie, I don't think it'll ever be below the B tier ever. So I have to say it's like mid. My standards were mid on this movie compared to what I would have liked, but definitely Wasn't horrible. So it's in the A tier. Next is a movie that I've forgotten almost entirely about, that I almost forgot to add it to this list. It's The Other Zoe. I did not see this. I don't even know if this movie was in theaters. I don't know. This movie, I'm gonna put it here. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna put it there. Wasn't a bad movie at all, but yeah, I'm not really a huge rom-com guy, but I love Drew Starkey's performance in this movie, especially. Like, seeing him go from playing the character of Rafe in Outer Banks to playing the character of Zach in this movie, it was quite interesting to watch, seeing his diversity as an actor. And the movie itself is a good love story, I guess, but I'm just not usually a big fan of the genre, so I'm gonna put it in the C tier. But it's definitely better than a couple of the other movies I've got in the tier. Moving on to The Killer. This is another Netflix movie that I saw, and I'm gonna put this right here, below. Yeah, I'm gonna put below the Barbie movie. Now, what they did with this movie, I haven't seen. I don't think ever, where you have pretty much the entire movie. The character in himself doesn't say a whole load, but he narrates his entire thing. Like the first 30 minutes of this movie, almost nothing happens, and yet I was still intrigued. Just because of like the tone he and the speed that he was talking at kept things very like cold, which I found very cool for this kind of movie. And she was like a cool like assassin type movie. So I think it was very well acted and very well shot, and the tones were great. It was a good movie, but definitely not like, since it was lower budget. I think it just doesn't hit up to like the blockbusters that it has above it, but definitely an A tier movie. Next, I've got Napoleon. I wish I could put this movie higher than I'm going to, because I was very excited for the movie just because the trailers had me so hyped up. But I just really did not enjoy any of like the family aspects. And the thing is, I don't really know how to deal with these kind of movies sometimes, because they're based off historical facts. So sometimes you have to like make sure that it, like, abides by those facts, but at the same time that takes away from the movie in itself. So that's why like it's hard for me to watch like historical movies at times. So I'm going to put it at I'm gonna put it here. Yeah, I'm gonna put it here, just above Fair Play. It, it was okay. Like, especially like all the battle scenes, which is what I would wanted to watch. Like I wanted to see his tactical thinking when it came to the battlefield, which all those scenes were great, but it focused a lot more on his family aspects, which I get that was part of the movie. That's like not a fault to the directors or anything, but I just didn't like any of the scenes with him, like the way he was talking to his wife. It's just like, yeah. I don't know if it was just because the actor or the actual movie in itself, but I'm not a huge fan of Joaquin Phoenix. So just like, I don't know. It was a B tier. Like I can't really put any lower than the B tier, but wasn't the biggest fan of it. Now we've made it to the last movie on the list. We've got Leave the World Behind, and I definitely think this was my favorite Netflix movie that I watched, and I am gonna put it. I'm actually gonna put it here, right here, just above the Barbie movie. And that might be slightly controversial, but the acting from Julia Roberts and, oh, I'm definitely gonna pronounce this guy's name wrong, but oh, I can't even pronounce it. I forgot what the guy's name is. But Ethan Hawke as well, Kevin Bacon, just every single character is at the top of their game acting in this movie. And there's a couple of scenes like it was very slow progressor, just everything was going downhill, but like it didn't stop. It was only just started with one small thing, things got worse and worse and worse. And like it's funny, the ending actually, for a movie that's about like an apocalypse, or not an apocalypse, like a civil war, whatever is going on in the background of this movie, it ends with the theme song for Friends. it's a very well thought out movie. Like I found it quite interesting to watch, and just the acting was very well done, especially from Ethan Hawke. My goodness gracious, a couple of scenes. I don't know how that guy does it, but he had me was pulling at my heartstrings in a couple of scenes, especially when he was talking to Kevin Bacon's character about his son dying. Like it was whoa, or at least his son being sick. Anyway, sorry, I have rambled on for 30 minutes now, so I'm gonna end the video there. But yeah, this is what my list was for last year. If you guys want to let me know what yours is, feel free to let me know in the comments. If you don't, feel free not to. But yeah, anyway, this is my list for the 2023 movies ranked in my own personal opinion. So yeah, hope you all have yourself a good day, and bye.